on Dakota Access. But what we have seen is there's no way to enforce the laws, the rules, the contracts that Dakota Access agreed to be bound by.
Right.
South Dakota put into place a way for landowners and the public to actually complain or bring violations forward and then report them to the Public Utilities Commission in South Dakota, and how those were addressed.
Which is that state's equivalent
How they were
of the
addressed.
Iowa Utilities
Iowa
Board.
did nothing like that. What Iowa did was issue a blank check to Dakota Access.
You're right.
Yes.
And they said,
yes.
well, they're going to keep their word. They'll do whatever they said they were going to do. And Dakota Access said, oh, we're going to follow best management practices. You don't need to worry about this. Oh, no, we promise that we won't begin construction until we have all the permits. And then guess what happened? They began construction without all of their permits in place, including Iowa Department of Natural Resources and including the Army Corps of Engineers permits. And what that tells you is that they're not going to follow any
That's right.
of the laws. What we have seen is that even the contracts that they have with the landowners, they think if they violated that, all they have to do is run after them with a lawyer and write a check, when they haven't separated the topsoil from the bottom soil, the below surface, the below topsoil layer. That they can pollute our rivers, that they can do construction when it's too wet. All of these things are a violation of the rules they agreed to be bound by. Right. And the Iowa Utilities Board is not holding them accountable. So what do we want? We want a similar process to what South Dakota has put in place. We need to have a public liaison officer that we can call, that we have the phone number for, that a landowner can call and say they're going on land that is not part of their easement, they're not separating the topsoil from the rest of the soil, they are doing construction when it's too wet. We can report sedimentation over the rivers. Because of the failure of the Iowa Utilities Board to do anything like that, our coalition put in place pipeline construction watchdogs, where we provided our watchdogs with the law, and they are supposed to be monitoring it, but they have no place to report these violations. And so it is incumbent on the Iowa Utilities Board to revoke that blank check and to put in place a way to enforce their laws and rules, all of those laws.
Make Dakota Access pay for it.
And
Yes.
well, not just
Yeah.
pay for it, not do it. If they break this, they cannot pay for every violation. The permit must be revoked. They must stop work until they have addressed this. They cannot just pay their way out of this. They think that's what the blank check is. They think that they can pay, that they can just rush through and violate the law and ask for forgiveness rather than permission. They do not have permission, and their checks are not valid. We asked the Iowa Utilities Board to stop this blank check. So we know that they gave them a blank check when the Iowa Utilities Board recognized that they had begun construction in violation of the rule that the board had established. And then the Iowa Utilities Board said, oh, no penalties. Do you remember that?
No surprise.
No surprise. Stop.
Yes.
And so we're asking that the Iowa Utilities Board actually put in place a way to monitor violations of the law and cure them, fix them. Without that, the law is illegitimate.
Right,
They cannot take away rights without also giving responsibilities to those who take it. So Dakota Access has no responsibilities that they are obligated to fulfill, and that they are being forced to fulfill by the very board that granted them. So you can read our motion. We've got copies of it. Dick Lamb has copies of it, and you can see what we're asking, that they appoint a public liaison officer that will receive the complaints and will report to the board the complaint and how it was addressed. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Judy, if you'd like to come out. Well,
All right. Thank you. I'm Dick Lamb, my wife Judy.
We own a farm on US 30 just a little bit west of Ames. The pipeline will go through our farm in the worst possible way, diagonally from corner to corner. It'll be about a mile of the total pipeline route right on our farm. I would just pause for a moment to attempt to express what this means to a landowner. There just aren't words to describe to having the government seize your land and destroy it, and you have no recourse and nothing you can do. It's an anger and a hopelessness that I have difficulty expressing. But that aside, we're not here today to dwell on that. Our purpose today is to present a petition, and I was asked to tell a story that would support this petition. And it's difficult because there are so many stories to tell and that we've heard. But I'll relate just a couple. First of all, our crops will be landlocked by the pipeline easement. You have to get to the other side for harvesting. We're trying to figure out how to do that. And we're trying to figure out how to be compensated for the damage to our crops. We've left numerous phone calls. We've tried to reach someone. We cannot get an answer from Dakota Access. We can't find anybody to even talk to. Let me give you another story. We had a call just a couple days ago from a gentleman with Dakota Access. He may have been a contract employee, and he said, we wanted to let you know today or very soon we're going to cut your crops. And that did happen just yesterday, I believe. And I said, well, thanks for letting us know anyway. I've always tried to be very courteous in dealing with these people that call. It's not their fault. They don't make the decisions. And I said, thanks. And I said, now, when you actually do the construction, you come through with your trenchers, are you going to call me then? And he said, no. This is your last notice. This is the only notice you'll get. Now, the permit requires a 48-hour notice before they do construction, and they're not doing it. Isn't this incredible? It's too much trouble to make a telephone call for a mile-long stretch of their pipeline. Nobody can be bothered to do this. Isn't that incredible? Maybe it costs too much, $4 billion for this pipeline, and they can't afford to make a telephone call. Well, that's an example. But you know what? I don't really blame that gentleman. I don't even blame Dakota Access, because they are doing what corporations do. They're making money for their shareholders. They're cutting costs. The fault lies here.
Yep.
With
That's
the
right.
Iowa
Yeah.
government, the state of Iowa. They allowed this to happen. They enabled it to happen. And now they're washing their hands of it, walking away, and not even listening to our complaints and the violations. That's why we need this. That's why we're demanding it. We're not pleading. We're not begging it. We're demanding it. They need to set up somebody to deal with the infractions. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam Alexander.
My name's Pam Alexander, and I'm a landowner in Mahaska County, along with my mom and my sister. We've been fighting this since we got our first letter. I had a speech written out, but Dick pretty well said it all. I can back up what he said. Landowners who sign voluntary easements are not being treated right. You have to get a lawyer to get satisfaction, and that's not right. The IUB board needs to appoint someone to take care of our concerns. We have farmers and landowners have provided jobs in this state long before Dakota Access, a private for-profit company, came to this state. And in order for us to continue to provide those jobs after Dakota Access is long gone and their pipe fitters are taking their money and gone home, we need to know that our farms are able to produce crops that we can make a living off of. And we need this board appointed to make sure that our land is left the way it should. I'm sorry. My first concern was written in a letter to Dakota Access, and I asked, who's going to oversee this project that isn't employed by Dakota Access? And I was never given an answer to that. I was told that, I believe it was a consumer advocate person, told me that there would be no problem. The IUB board would address all the problems and take care of it, stop construction if necessary.
Didn't happen.
That doesn't happen. And we need someone to stand up for Iowans who live here, pay taxes here, and love this state dearly. And you cannot take our land just because there are jobs. We provide jobs, and we count. And I hope the IUB board will listen and address our problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Rocky is one of those landowners whose farm is being decimated as we speak. And the Storm Lake Pilot Tribune reported in detail some of the violations that are occurring, and I'd like to ask Miriam Kashia of 100 Grannies to tell you more about that.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming today. This is a long article. I'm going to quote a little bit and paraphrase some, and a lot of it you've already heard, but this is from the horse's mouth. This is a landowner from Fremont whose land has, in his words, quote, I am writing this statement to inform you of the major infractions that Dakota Access LLC has done while they were in initial phase of their pipeline project. This includes total disregard of the landowner, land, county inspector, agricultural impact mitigation plan, which was what the IUB set forth, and also environmental infractions they have incurred while in Keokuk County in the state of Iowa. He goes on to say, and I'm paraphrasing, they were supposed to remove 24 to 26 inches of topsoil, black topsoil, so it could be replaced. Well, they removed 10 inches. And when, which is in the AIMP, the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Plan. They had a meeting with the contractors, and they were promised that they'd go back and correct the problem. But they didn't. They continued to work as normal, and they refused to remove the remainder of the topsoil, in Stephen's quote. Then, another meeting, where they were addressing the same issue, removing the appropriate amount of topsoil so it could be replaced appropriately. It had rained several days, and now the whole thing was a sloppy mess.
Oops.
And they went in with their big heavy-duty equipment, and here's a quote, working in those wet conditions and mixing the topsoil and clay by rutting it up with their multi-passes through the area with their heavy equipment. Now it's impossible to remove that topsoil appropriately.
You're right.
Yay.
This procedure was an environmental infraction, as well as being clearly addressed on page 10 of the mitigation statement, as to not continue construction when conditions will cause mixing of clay and topsoil. They're totally disregarding what they're supposed to do. You know why? Because there's nobody to stop them.
Right.
It's up to us. That's my quote, not his. So they also did another thing, and this is just at the beginning. They went in and they were dewatering, is the technical term, into his tile system, which was getting all full of sludge because they had removed the protective cover on it. And so he filed another complaint. And it was causing, in his words, irreparable damage. The project manager told the county inspectors that they had their legal team in place and they were going to take down the fence that had been set up to stop construction until these problems were addressed. And they were going to move forward without correcting any infractions.
That ain't right.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
We're going to take down the fence that the county inspectors put up to stop you from doing these bad things. But they went ahead, took down the fence and said, our legal team is in place, we're just going to move on. Folks, this is not okay.
It's also criminal.
Thank
That's
you.
right.
And his final quote that I'll share with you, after they proceeded, they went ahead and de-watered large areas into the cornfield, knowing they did not have my signed approval. And they caused additional damages. They're doing whatever they want, the easiest, cheapest, fastest way, so they can get this built before we stop them. Let's stop them.
And Mr. Rocky, who is the subject of that article, called me this morning on the way up, and he said that yesterday the county board voted whether to take on this matter, and they voted no. So that emphasizes why we need the Iowa Utility Board that caused this problem in the first place to step up and protect Iowans.
That's right.
It's never been about our interests. It's been about the interests of a private Texas oil company.
Yep.
And it's time the IUB got its priorities straight and made the health and well-being of Iowa landowners and all Iowans whose water will be perpetually threatened by this horrible project, make that and that alone their priority. So if either the press or any other guests assembled today have any questions, we would certainly be happy to address those. Anything at all?
Copies of the petition?
Oh, yes.
If anybody wants to see what we have filed with the Iowa Utilities Board, it's on the Iowa Utilities Board site, but we brought copies of it today.
Dick has them right here, so just ask for them.
Have you got any response from them prior to this on these issues? Utilities board?
We have not gotten any response from the Iowa Utilities Board. We did bring up some violations before and asked that they issue a stop work order, which they did not do. And what we have seen is that any time violations have been brought forward, first of all, Dakota Access denies them, and then when they're brought forward as a valid infraction, the Iowa Utilities Board just goes, oh, don't do it again. And they go forward. And so the response has been so little and too late.